Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. This video is part of the YouTube series that I'm making called Zero to Hero Business Central. In this particular series, I already uploaded few videos on my YouTube. In this particular video, we are going to go over code units and different types of procedures in Business Central. So if you see over here code unit, a code unit is a container for AL code that you can use in many application objects. For example, if you wanted to write code, that code actually will be written in code unit. So code unit can be a container of code. For example, if I take this as a code unit, we can call it as a container of code unit, and in this code unit we can write procedures and different types of code. And this code unit can be called from other objects such as tables or pages or reports or queries, etc. So a code unit is basically a container of code. You typically implement business logic in code units and call the code unit from the object that needs to perform that specific logic. So we are going to write the code in the code units, and we are going to call that particular code from tables. And in here, if you see procedures, like other languages, AL methods are fundamental programming elements. A method, also known as procedures, is a named group of statements that perform an operation or task. For example, if you wanted to perform a task, for that particular task, you need to create a procedure inside a code unit. For example, let's say if this is a code unit, inside this code unit, we are going to write one procedure which actually performs a specific task. So in any other programming language, we have methods. Those methods in AL programming are called as procedures. So we are going to see different types of procedures like local procedures, internal procedures, protected procedures, global procedures in code. So firstly, let me open my Zero to Hero project which I created in my previous videos. So in this particular video, we are going to create the code unit. So firstly, let me create a new folder called code units. And in this code units folder, let me create one more file called employee operations operations code unit.al. Let me change the name. Should be al. So I created the employee operations code unit.al. The snippet for this code unit is t code unit. So if you type this snippet, it will automatically create the code unit template for you. So let me give the id and name as employee operations. So in here you can see there is one global variable which is created by default, and we have trigger on run. So this trigger on run is part of code unit. So whenever we wanted to call this particular code unit, we can also call this on run trigger. So let me put one simple message in here, employee operations code unit run. So let me call this particular on run trigger from our employee page. So let me create one more action in the processing. Let me copy this and let me paste in here, and let me call this as call employee operations code unit. And here we need to create a variable to that code unit. So the syntax is to create, let me call it employee code unit. This is a variable to that particular code unit, and here we need to give the code unit name. So the syntax is variable to declare variables. So var and employee code unit, it's a variable, and code unit is what type of object it is. So it is of type code unit, and employee operations is the actual object. In here, let me do this, and yeah, now here you can see I have called the, let me just show you that. Here you can see I have called the on run. So it is going to call the on run. If I go to definition, okay, if I go in here, so this will be triggered. So let me actually publish this, and let's see how it actually looks. Now let me go to employees page. page, and in here I have call employee operations code unit. So if I click on this one, you can say employee operation code unit run. So basically in here we are calling that on run code unit. So this is what code unit is, and let us now see the different types of procedures. So there are four types of procedures. Local procedures, here you can see it already gave us the code, so let me just do this. So there are local procedures, there are internal procedures, there are global procedures, and there are protected procedures. So firstly, let us see the local procedure, and in here I'm going to put a message called sample local procedure in employee operations. So the difference between these procedures is local procedures can be called within the object. For example, if I wanted to call this sample local procedure from other objects, it is actually not possible. So let me show you that. In employee page, I already have the variable for employee code unit, and let me try to actually call the employee let me actually try to call the local procedure called sample local procedure. But here you can see the option itself is not showing when I use the IntelliSense by using control space. So I cannot actually call this procedure, and if I just do this thing and paste here, it is going to give me an error saying this procedure is not accessible. So you can see sample local procedure is inaccessible due to its protection level. That means we are not be able to call local procedures from other objects. We would be able to call the local procedures only from within the object. So let me call this from actually here, and let me see if it is possible. Yeah, it is possible to call the local procedure. So what I will do is now I will actually comment this out, and let me do this. If you see, let me go to employee page and call employee operations code unit. In here, when we do on run, it is going to go to here, and it is going to call our sample local procedure. So let me publish this one, and let's see what happens when we click on call employee code unit operations. So let me go to employee page again, employee page, and now let me call this call employee operations code unit. Now here you can see sample local procedure in employee operations code unit. So basically the flow of this is, so first it is going to call the on run from the code unit, and once we are in the on run, it is going to call the sample local procedure. Now let me actually create an internal procedure. So internal procedures can be actually called from within the object and from other objects. So let me just create an internal procedure called sample internal procedure, and here I am going to write the code sample internal procedure in employee operations code unit. So when we try to access local procedure from other object, it gave us an error. But let us try to actually access this internal procedure from other object. So let me go in here. Let me create one more action called call employee operations code unit internal procedure and and let me try to actually call that internal procedure from other object. So let's see. Now here you can see I am able to actually call the sample internal procedure, and if I just use the IntelliSense as well, let me, here you can see it actually shows me sample internal procedure. So the internal procedures can be called from within the object, or they also can be called from the other object. So let me actually publish this, and let's see how it actually looks. I am now going to open the employee page, and in employee page you can see there are different actions: call employee operations code unit internal procedure, and now here you can see sample internal procedure in employee operations code unit. So that's how we can call both internal and local procedures. Now let us see what are protected and global procedures. So the protected procedures can be actually called from the extended objects. So for example, if I create the protected procedure in the page itself, let me go and say protected procedure, sample protected procedure, and here I'm going to say message sample protected procedure in employee page. The protected procedures, as I said, are only be able to call from the extended objects. For example, we have this object employee page, and this procedure sample protected procedures we will be able to call only from the extended objects of employee page. So we already have our dependency app where we actually extended this employee page. So let me go in the extension, and in here you can see we have employee page extension, and in this page extension we would be able to call that particular procedure. So let me actually go in here and let me put one on validate, and if I say this, here you can here we should be able to call that procedure, but first we need to actually publish this, and we need to download the symbols again in our dependency app. So let me go to dependency app, and now let me download symbols again. Now let me actually check. Here you can see sample protected procedure. So if I publish this again, so once I am validating this employee salary, the protected procedure will be called because we wrote the code in on validate. So let us check that. Let me go to employee page, employee page, and let me actually edit this one, and let's say 10. Now here you can see sample protected procedure in employee page. That means this is going in the main extension and calling this code. So we will only be able to call protected procedures from extended objects. And let me actually try to access this sample protected procedure from this code unit. So let me actually create a variable to that employee page, and let me call that page and employee, come on, employee page. And now let us actually try to access that sample protected procedure, and let me paste in here. You see I cannot actually call that procedure from here because sample protected procedure is inaccessible due to its protection level. Because protected procedures we will be able to call them only from the extended objects. So let me comment this out, and now let us see what are global procedures. Global procedures can be called from within the object or from different objects in the same project or dependency projects. So for example, let us actually create one global procedure. The syntax for creating global procedure is just procedure, and we can say sample global procedure. You can say sample global procedure and begin and end, and message, it's a sample global procedure, sample global procedure. So in employee operations code unit, so we'll be able to call this procedure either from this object or from other objects in the same project or from dependency apps, any object. So let me actually go and let me publish this one. And now let me go to my dependency app and let's download symbols. And now in here let me actually try to access, let me create a variable to that particular code unit called employee operations. So let me copy this and we go to here, and we can say employee operations, operations code unit, employee operations, and I should be able to call this. Let me comment this out and let me actually try to call C sample global procedure. But other procedures which are internal and local procedures are not accessible from here. So let me actually go and publish this one and let's see how it actually looks. So again, we wrote the code in on validate of employee salary. So let me go and see how it actually looks in the UI. Go to employee page and now let me actually validate this field 20, and in here you can see sample global procedure in employee operations code unit. So that's all in this video. If you like this video, you should consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be uploading more videos in this particular series called Zero to Hero Business Central, and if you don't want to miss them, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. Thank you.